We're glad that you would take time out of your schedule to join us for this program today. In this lesson, we want to look at the church in Philadelphia. These verses are found in Revelation chapter 3, verses 7 through 13. Of all the seven churches, this is probably the best church as far as the letters is concerned. And it begins like all the letters. It begins with a description of the speaker. We find this in verse 7. Said, "These things says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens." So notice these terms in regards to the speaker, which of course would be Jesus himself. First, he describes himself as holy, or the Holy One. This title is a common title for Jesus in the New Testament, but it's also a term reserved for God the Father in the Old Testament. So this title then confirms the deity of Jesus, because we have the same title used in reference to God the Father and Jesus. Since the same title is used in regards to both of them, that indicates, of course, that both are equal in deity. One is just as much God as the other. Then Jesus also said that he was the true one. And this reminds us of John 14 in verse 6, where Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me." This term, of course, emphasizes the genuineness of Jesus. There is nothing hypocritical or untrue about Jesus, in contrast to the false gods or even the false Jews, which probably filled the city of Philadelphia. Jesus also said that he had the key of David. Of course, keys are symbolic of authority. You know, when we go to office buildings and so forth, oftentimes you'll see a sign on the door posted that said authorized personnel only. Well, that door is almost always locked. But then you see someone with a key. He sticks the key in the door, opens the door, and walks in. The key indicates authority. The key gives him the authority to enter that room that no one else is allowed to enter. And so the key gives Jesus then the symbol of authority. Matthew 28, Jesus said, "I have all authority been given to me in heaven and on earth." It also find in Isaiah 22 in verse 22, it said, "The key of the house of David I will lay on his shoulder. So he shall open and no one shall shut, and he shall shut and no one shall open." So being the root of David and having David's key proved that he was the Messiah. So Jesus controls the entrance to David's house, which is the New Jerusalem or the spiritual kingdom. Today we call it the church, but Jesus controlled the entrance to the church. He opened the door to all who obey his will. But then on the other hand, he also shuts the door to all who will not obey his will. So what is right about this church? We find only good things about this church. There is no rebuke, there is no condemnation, no critique of something lacking in regards to this church. In verse 8, we find these things said about the church. He said, "I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name." He first of all said, "I have set before you an open door." Now, we do not know exactly what that open door is. It may be referred to an open door of evangelism, or it may be other things, but it doesn't really matter. This church, he says, had little power. But even though they had little strength and power, apparently they used what they had. God was granting them an opportunity for even greater service because he was placing before them an open door. The open door may be an open door to Christ's kingdom, which of course no one could shut. He also said that you have a little strength. Most likely, this refers to the church's little influence or power because of either the small number or the wealth of the members. Now, Jesus did not say this to embarrass them, but really to compliment them. They had not used their little strength as an excuse to do nothing. They had done what they could with what they had. It seems sometimes today some churches or individuals have the idea that because I can do very little, I will do nothing. Just because we might not be able to do much does not mean that we can use that excuse to do nothing at all. The church in Philadelphia had little strength, but it seemed to be like the woman that Jesus complimented in Mark 14 and verse 8. A woman who broke the alabaster box of oil and poured it on Jesus' head. The disciples criticized her for the waste. They said it should have been sold and given to the poor. But Jesus says she had done what she could. God wants us to do what we can. Therefore, don't compare yourself to other people and what they can do or have done. God is not going to judge us based on what other people have done. God judges us based on our ability, what opportunity that we have. So we simply need to do what we can, even if it's just a little, even if you have just a little power or a little strength. Do what you can. But then Jesus also said that this church have kept my word and have not denied my name. Pagan authorities often tested Christians by commanding them to blaspheme Jesus under penalty of death. No doubt there have been times when it meant ridicule and persecution even to this church, but apparently they were faithful. And even though they had only a little power, they faithfully kept the word, which is more than what many people have done. This church relied on the power of Christ, and they persevered. And then in verse 9 we find words of comfort. He said, "Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you." He mentioned the synagogue of Satan. Apparently, these were Jews of the fleshly kingdom, fleshly Jews. They were Jews who claimed to be the true Israel, but in actuality, the true Israel were the ones following Jesus. So they were actually lying in regards to where they were. Oh, they were the fleshly descendants of Abraham, but they were no longer God's chosen people. They were no longer God's people because they refused to obey the will of God. But these Jews were probably using their political influence to encourage the Roman authorities to put more pressure on Christians. And these Christians could do little to stop it because, remember, they had little power. But here the speaker said that he's going to cause these false Jews to come and worship or bow down before the Christians. This is not teaching us to worship other men, but it's simply pointing out that the church would be lifted up and the church would be glorified. And everything that the church had suffered would be vindicated, because even the false teacher would come and recognize the truthfulness of the church. And then we come to verse 10, and again we find words of comfort. "Because you have kept my command to persevere, I also will keep you from the hour of trial which shall come upon the whole world, to test those who dwell on the earth." There was some kind of testing that was going to come. Again, we're not sure what this was referring to, but he promised that there would come a testing upon the whole world. But even though the testing would come to the whole world, he says, "I will keep those who have kept my word." Notice the play on words. Because they had kept God's word, he would also keep them. This reminds us of 2 Peter 2 and verse 9. When Peter said, "Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptation, and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment." Yes, God knows how to deliver his people. But then we also have words of encouragement in verse 11. He said, "Behold, I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no one may take your crown." He is coming quickly, and so he encourages them to hold fast. Indeed, the trials of verse 10 would come quickly. And so now we have the exhortation to continue to hold fast, because there would be coming times of trial. There would be coming a time of testing, and they needed to hold fast to what they had. That word hold fast means, of course, to take heed. In 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 16, Paul wrote to Timothy and said, "Take heed to yourselves and to your doctrine. Continue in them, for in doing so you will save yourself and those who hear you." Similar words is found written into the Thessalonians in 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 15. There Paul said, "Therefore, brethren, stand fast and hold the tradition which you were taught, whether by word or our epistle." Yes, we are exhorted and to hold fast. If we hold fast, a crown of righteousness will be given to us. But of course, a warning is also given. If we do not hold fast, then we will not receive a crown of righteousness. And so in verse 12, then we have the promised reward. "He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. And he shall go out no more, and I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, and the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God. And I will write on him my new name." First of all, he said he will have a promised reward. We will be made a pillar in the temple of God. Now, a pillar refers to something that supports and sustains. And this is interesting, again, kind of like a play on words. In this life, the Christians in Philadelphia were considered weak. They were considered to have little strength. And yet, notice Jesus said he will make them pillars of strength. A pillar is something that is strong because it has to be strong to support whatever it is supporting to. In ancient times, the names of heroes were often inscribed on pillars to honor them. So this is both an exhortation to honor, but also an exhortation to show that they will remain strong and firm in this sinful generation. And then he says, "I will write on them 3 new names." These are words of assurance. The new names will mean that they belong to God. And so the writer here is encouraging the Christian to know that if they hold fast, they will give new names which prove and show that they truly belong to God. On them would be written the name of my God. They are his people. On them would be written the name of God's city, which is the New Jerusalem. This indicates citizenship in the kingdom of God. Hebrews 11 verse 10. The writer of Hebrews said, "For he waited for a city which has foundation, whose builder and maker is God." Those words were said regarding to Abraham. And then he also says on the church in Philadelphia, they would have a new name written on them. This would be an evidence of honor. It may refer back to this city changing its name in regards to to honor the Roman emperor. The bridegroom often changes her name to honor the bride. And so the people then receive great honor and glory because of their faithfulness to God. This church is a great church, and this church should encourage each one of us to be like this church. I wonder if we had a letter written to you, would it be a letter in which no condemnation or no rebuke would be written? I dare say for most of us, we probably wouldn't. We have something that is lacking in our life. But this should encourage us, even if we do have something lacking, to try to change that, but also continue holding fast. Don't rely on your past life or your past laurels, what you have done in the past. but continue to look to the future, to continue to hold fast and to live for God. If we hold fast, we'll receive a great honor. If we don't hold fast, then of course we will not receive that honor. I hope this would encourage each one of you to be like the church in Philadelphia, to be a church worthy of honor and glory and a crown of righteousness. Thank you.